The first blow of the demolition hammer hit at sunrise loud enough to shake the birds out of the trees and jolt me straight out of my chair. I stepped onto my porch just in time to see the crew ripping apart the corner of my neighbor Victoria's garage, the same corner she once claimed I was illegally encroaching on. Neighbors lined the street, filming like it was some suburban crime documentary. Victoria stood frozen in her driveway, clutching a clipboard like it could somehow reverse the court order. Most people think the drama started with that demolition, but they're wrong. It started the day she told me my yard was actually hers, and the part she tried to steal wasn't even the worst of it. I never planned on starting my life over at 38, but fate has a way of showing up with a cardboard box and a set of keys when you least expect it. The house I moved into wasn't something I bought, it was something I inherited. My Uncle Ray left it to me in his will, a weathered craftsman-style home tucked against a rise of pine-covered hills outside Asheville, North Carolina. Old wood floors that creaked like they were whispering family secrets. A porch swing that groaned with every sway. Ivy that crawled along the back fence like it paid rent. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't modern, but it was real. It was mine. At the time, I lived in a cramped third-floor apartment above a brewery downtown. I spent more nights listening to drunk tourists argue over parking than crickets or wind. So when the lawyer handed me the deed, I took one look at the hand-drawn, lot sketch, odd-shaped, sweeping, almost swallowing the small hill behind it, and I felt something loosen in my chest. 3 weeks later, I loaded my life into a rented U-Haul, grabbed a strong coffee for courage, and drove north until the city noise disappeared behind me. The first 2 months were blissfully normal. I fixed the loose roof shingles, replaced the porch screens, painted the shutters a deep forest green the way Uncle Ray used to like them. I spent slow mornings sipping coffee on the porch afternoons, clearing out overgrown brush evenings, grilling cheap steaks on the old brick fire pit. And not once did a soul bother me. My neighbors were the quiet type wave from the mailbox people. We shared polite nods and the occasional "how's it going," but nobody lingered long enough to pry. Best of all, there was no HOA, no newsletters about lawn height, no fines for slightly rebellious trash cans, no committees with clipboards evaluating porch decor like it was a crime scene. Just peace. At least until she moved in. The house next door had been vacant since I arrived, a sleek, contemporary home with sharp angles and too much glass to feel trustworthy. One morning, a moving truck pulled into the driveway, and a woman hopped out like she was stepping off a stage. Platinum blonde hair, tailored blazer heels sharp enough to aerate a lawn. She barked orders at two poor movers struggling with an antique armoire she clearly had no intention of touching. From across my yard, she spotted me on my ladder, repainting the eaves, and gave me that tight realtor smile, the kind that stretches wide but dies before it reaches the eyes. That evening, she marched up my porch steps like she'd scheduled a meeting I forgot to attend. "You must be the new homeowner," she announced before I could say hello. "I'm Victoria Hale. I'll be your neighbor." I wiped paint flecks off my hands. "Ethan Cole. Nice to meet you." She didn't seem interested in niceties. Her gaze slid past me, scanning the width of my yard like she was evaluating its resale value. "You have quite a large lot," she said slowly. "Unusual shape. Have you had the boundaries verified recently?" That was her third sentence. Not where I worked, not how long I'd been here, not even a polite welcome to the neighborhood. Just, "Are you sure this is yours?" I told her I had the original plat from my uncle and a recent one in my name. "Oh, of course," she said with a quick rehearsed smile. "I just noticed your fence line sits interestingly close to what might be my easement. I'll have to double-check my deed." The flags didn't show up until the next week. Bright orange tape wrapped around the base of my oak tree. A neon pink marker planted beside my shed. A yellow one stuck directly in my vegetable garden, none of them mine. That's when I realized something I wish I'd known from day one. Some neighbors bring cookies, some bring welcome baskets, but some show up with a clipboard and start measuring what isn't theirs. The morning I confronted Victoria about the flags, I was mowing the lawn, mindlessly pushing the old Craftsman mower in neat lines, pretending I didn't see the neon markers scattered like confetti from a party I wasn't invited to. But eventually, irritation won over denial. I cut the engine, wiped sweat off my forehead, and yelled across the fence, "Morning. Did you lose some art supplies in my yard?" Victoria appeared on her walkway, wearing oversized sunglasses, a crisp blouse, and carrying a manila folder like it was a badge of authority. "Oh, those," she said, waving a hand. "Just marking a few questionable boundaries." Questionable. That word hit like a splinter under my nail. "On my vegetables?" I asked. She offered a sympathetic shrug that held the warmth of a tax audit. "Nothing personal, Ethan. Just due diligence. You understand." I didn't understand. But I understood enough to know trouble when it wore heels. That evening I found a letter stuffed into my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just my name scrawled in aggressive, cursive. Inside was a printed diagram, an outdated satellite image with a bright red line slicing straight through my shed, through the fire pit I'd built, and across a chunk of my yard. Under it a note, pending survey results potential encroachment. Please cooperate. I laughed. Then I stopped laughing. Then I poured a whiskey and called my attorney, Rachel Nguyen. She listened calmly, like clients calling about unhinged neighbors was her morning yoga routine. Okay, she said, tapping keys in the background. Send me your original plat and your uncle's deed. I emailed everything over. Ethan, you're fine, she said after a pause. Your records are clean. But if she's commissioning a survey, get your own done. I'll recommend someone honest. That's how I met Monica Price, a surveyor who looked like she could snap a tape measure over her knee and didn't suffer fools lightly. When she walked my lot with me the next afternoon, she squatted beside one of Victoria's markers and plucked it from the soil like it offended her. She said. Good. Or you're screwed, I asked. She smirked. I've seen this trick before. People hire specialized surveyors. Specialized ones who deliver the results the client wants. Not the results the land shows. That made my stomach sink. Let me guess, I said. My neighbor works in real estate. Monica clucked her tongue. Oh, wonderful. That's like saying they've got a master's degree in causing problems. She promised to be there when Victoria's survey team arrived. Victoria's surveyor showed up 3 days later. Todd Benson, early 40s, wearing mirrored sunglasses, hair slicked like he drove a convertible even on rainy days. He knocked on my door with a polite smile that didn't reach his pupils. Morning, he said. We'll be taking measurements along the shared boundary today. Just a courtesy notice. Great, I said. My surveyor will be here too. He blinked. You hired one. Of course, I said flatly. That wiped the smirk from his face. When Monica arrived, she gave Todd a look that said, I know exactly who you are. Still in the game, Benson, she asked casually. He stiffened. Ah, Price. You doing legitimate work today, or the creative kind? She asked. Todd's jaw clenched. We're professionals. Monica winked at me. That's what makes it fun. For hours, they paced the line between our properties. Todd and his two-man crew planting markers suspiciously close to my garage. Monica jotting notes and photographing everything with a running commentary that grew increasingly sarcastic. At one point, Todd tried to stop her from photographing a marker. That's private survey data, he said. Monica stepped closer. If it sits on my client's land, sweetheart, it's as public as a billboard. Victoria watched from her porch arms, folded lips curled like she was sucking lemons. When they packed up, Monica leaned in and whispered, this isn't just a territorial neighbor. Someone's backing her. 2 days later, my doorbell rang. On my porch stood 3 people wearing polos with Cypress Ridge Estates HOA embroidered above the chest. A 4th person, heels, clipboard hair, styled like a campaign photo, stepped forward. I'm Linda Prescott, president of Cypress Ridge Estates, she announced smoothly. We're informing local residents about our proposed community integration plan. I stared. Integration? You mean annexation? She laughed delicately. Ethan, we prefer to think of it as inclusion. A man beside her handed me a glossy trifold brochure showing manicured lawns, beige houses, and bullet points about mandatory compliance and community standards. I flipped it over. We're not in your district. Not yet, Linda said, warmly, too warmly. Victoria has expressed concerns about boundary clarity, home values, and compliance consistency. Expansion is on the table. And you funded her lawsuit, I asked. Her smile didn't twitch. I can't discuss another resident's legal matters, so that's a yes. Ethan, she said softly, you'll find life much simpler once we're all on the same page. I handed the brochure back. I like my pages blank. They left with tight smiles. The next morning, 3 bags of yard waste landed over my fence. Message received. The turning point came in a brown envelope slid under my door like a bad spy movie. Inside were printed emails, screenshots from an anonymous sender, correspondence between Victoria Hale, Linda Prescott, Board Legal Group, subject strategy doc coal parcel, leverage options, highlighted phrases. If Victoria can establish confusion, we can petition for retroactive zoning overlay. Push narrative Ethan as difficult outsider. We can discreetly support legal expenses using community funds. Goal secure hillside portion for HOA easement expansion. My hands shook. They weren't trying to fix a boundary issue. They were trying to take my land. I scanned everything, uploaded it to a cloud folder titled Evidence, HOA Coercion, and sent it anonymously to Rachel. Her reply was instant. We're done playing defense. Let's burn them. That night, I posted everything to Reddit under a throwaway account, HOA trying to steal my land by funding fake survey. Here's the proof. Within 24 hours, it hit the front page. And suddenly the war wasn't just in my yard anymore. It was everywhere. County trucks showed up just after sunrise, 2 white pickups with official seals on the doors, and a third van carrying a drone operator who looked barely old enough to drive. I stepped onto my porch with a fresh cup of coffee, trying to look calmer than I felt. Victoria, of course, was already outside, full makeup, pressed blazer, clipboard clutched like a weapon. She greeted the officials with sugary politeness while shooting me glances sharp enough to staple paperwork. Monica pulled into my driveway a few minutes later, rolling her survey case behind her and giving me a look that said, "This is it." She didn't waste time. She walked straight to the county reps, shook hands, and immediately began coordinating the survey points. The process started quietly. GPS pings, laser readings, flag verifications, measurements of old plat pins that had been sitting in the earth longer than most of the neighborhood had been alive. For the first 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then, everything happened at once. One of the county guy's bald notebook tucked under one arm, voice like gravel, stood perfectly still near Victoria's driveway. He crouched, pressed a finger against an old iron marker, checked his tablet, then called out, "Can we get the recorder's office over here? I'm seeing a shift." A shift? Monica looked at me with raised brows, the kind you save for a plot twist. The recorder's rep hurried over, bending beside him. More measurements. Quiet murmurs. A glance in my direction. Another glance at Victoria's house. Finally, Monica straightened and walked toward me with a slow, deliberate breath. "Well," she said, "you won't like this." My stomach dropped. She continued, "Ethan, the eastern corner of her house, her garage, part of her deck, a long pause. They're sitting on your land, by 8 to 10 feet. I blinked. Sorry. I thought you said her house was on my property." I did. I laughed a single stunned breath. "That's impossible." "Nope," Monica said. "But it's definitely happening." Victoria, noticing the huddle, strutted over. "What's going on?" she demanded. "Why are you all whispering?" The county rep turned calmly. "Miss Hale, based on our records, your structure extends significantly onto Mr. Cole's lot. We'll need to file an encroachment report." For a moment, she didn't react. Then her face drained, then flushed so violently she looked sunburned. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "My survey Todd's report shows the opposite." She yanked out her folder, thrusting papers at the officials. Todd's name was stamped across the bottom. The county rep glanced at the signature, frowned, then looked at Monica. "He signed off on this?" he asked. Monica folded her arms. "That signature doesn't match the one on file with the licensing board." Silence. The drone above us hummed like it was holding its breath. Victoria sputtered, "Are you accusing me of forging a legal document?" Todd's voice cracked before he even appeared. He jogged over from his tripod face, pale sweat beading. There might have been a preliminary draft." "Did you sign this?" "Mr. Benson," the county rep asked flatly. Todd wilted. She wanted something definitive. She said the HOA would cover it. Boom. Victoria's jaw dropped. "You liar." "No, ma'am," Todd stammered. I said nothing. You're all conspiring. This is harassment." The county rep closed his notebook. "Miss Hale, if you dispute our findings, you may file a formal objection. In the meantime, we'll be forwarding this to zoning and the licensing board." Victoria finally cracked. "You're all wrong," she shouted, turning to me. "You did this. You orchestrated this." I took a sip of coffee. "I didn't move your house, Victoria." Her scream echoed through the trees. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was full neighbors, reporters, curious locals who'd seen the viral Reddit post. Victoria sat at the defendant's table, stiff and trembling. Todd was already on the stand when the judge asked, "Did you alter the survey results at Miss Hale's request?" Todd sagged like a deflated balloon. "Yes." Gasps. Pens drop. Victoria's attorney shut his eyes like he was praying for a meteor. Rachel, my attorney, stood and delivered the final blow, the subpoenaed HOA emails showing collusion funding and strategy to secure Ethan's hillside parcel. When she finished, the judge removed his glasses and sighed. "Miss Hale, the court finds you liable for encroachment, fraudulent filings, and intentional harassment." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His ruling hit harder than any demolition hammer. Remove the structures or pay full market rent and back pay. 90 days. Victoria looked at me with hatred, humiliation, and something else. Realization. The war she started wasn't going to end the way she planned. It was going to end the way truth demanded. The demolition crew came back on a cool, blue-skied Tuesday, almost exactly 45 days after the judge's ruling. I heard them before. I saw them metal-clanking engines idling the low murmur of men who definitely did not want to be involved in a neighbor war but were being paid too well to ask questions. I stepped onto my porch with my usual morning coffee just as the first panel of Victoria's garage came down. It peeled away like the shell of something that should have never been there because legally it never was. Two workers nodded politely at me as they carried it to the dumpster, both wearing the tight, sympathetic smiles of people who understood exactly what was happening. Victoria wasn't outside this time. Her blinds twitched, though, like she was peeking through them and trying not to be seen. A month ago, she would have marched across the yard in heels, brandishing a clipboard and accusations like confetti. Now, the fight had drained out of her, replaced by something quieter and heavier. Consequences have a way of doing that. By the end of the week, the entire encroaching corner of her house garage deck and the small guest room bump out was gone. What remained looked like a house that had been bitten into, awkward, crooked, exposed. It reminded me of a half-finished jigsaw puzzle, missing all the pieces that make sense. Neighbors who once stayed politely distant were suddenly stopping by. "Good for you," Ethan, one said, handing me a container of homemade chili. "Never liked how she acted," said another. "Glad someone finally stood up." One woman even joked, "You should sell tickets. This is better than cable." Funny how a neighborhood that once ignored you starts treating you like a folk hero when the HOA Big Bad Wolf gets caught blowing down her own house. Meanwhile, Cypress Ridge Estates, the HOA behind the whole mess, was collapsing from the inside. The leaked emails had triggered a full internal audit. Their funding misuse confirmed. Their secret plan to annex nearby streets exposed. Their president, Linda Prescott, on indefinite leave, according to their website, which had quietly been replaced with a plain white page that read, "Maintenance in progress. Please check back later." They never did come back. It was strangely poetic, an HOA taken down by the very rules they used to bully everyone else. Rachel, my attorney, filed the paperwork to have the newly confirmed boundary line re-registered at the county office. When I went to sign the last form, the clerk, a gray-haired guy with a coffee-stained tie, peered at me over his glasses. "You're that fellow with the neighbor mess, right?" he asked. I chuckled. "Guess that's me." He stamped the record book with a satisfying thunk. "Well, son, you got your land back." I walked out of that building feeling 10 pounds lighter. By the end of the second month, Victoria's house went on the market. The listing photos tried their best to hide the missing corner, strategic angles, dim lighting, lots of artistic shadows, but the internet wasn't fooled. People recognized the house from the viral Reddit thread. The comments section lit up. "Is this the Karen house? Does the property line come with the drama? Hope the garage comes with instructions. Some assembly required." Her realtor eventually disabled comments, but the damage was done. She accepted an offer far below market value. Rumor had it she practically begged to close early just to get out of the neighborhood. And then one quiet morning, she was gone. A moving truck, a slammed door, an SUV pulling away without so much as a glance at the place she'd tried to claim piece by piece. I won't lie, I breathed easier. Some people leave holes in the places they touch. Victoria left a crater. A few weeks later, a young couple moved in. Tech people from Atlanta, remote workers with cheerful energy and an impressive coffee maker they brought over as a nice-to-meet-you gift. "We heard the property had history," the husband said gently. "It's handled," I told him. He laughed. "Good, we don't plan on stealing your tomatoes." For the first time since moving in, I felt like I had actual neighbors, not invaders, plotting incursions with clipboards and colored flags. I decided to mark the moment properly. One Saturday afternoon, after setting new cedar posts deep into the soil and sealing the last bolt on my updated fence line, I installed a custom brass plaque I'd ordered weeks earlier, "Private property 0% encroachment since 2026. When the new couple saw it, they burst out laughing and brought a six-pack to celebrate. Word spread. By dusk, half the block had gathered for a spontaneous cookout, burgers, folding tables, kids running around, someone setting up a Bluetooth speaker. One guy even brought a tiny toy bulldozer and placed it on my fence as a memorial to fallen HOA ambitions. And just as the sky turned a soft lavender over the hills, Monica and Rachel showed up with a bottle of wine. "Told you we'd bury them," Monica said, raising her glass. Rachel smirked. "And you said you just wanted a quiet life." We laughed, clinking glasses, as the last bit of sunlight caught the brass plaque on my fence. The war was over. The land was mine. The peace was real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something settle inside me. Not victory, not revenge. Just the simple, satisfying knowledge that the line they tried to move, it ended up burying them instead.